I invented this in college. But 712 days later, I want to tell you about how I brought my product from idea to prototype and then from hand assembling in my apartment to full warehouse production. But first, if the YouTube algorithm did its job, then I think I can guess a couple things about you. Your heart rate probably spikes a little bit every time a new Stuff Made Here video comes out. A part of you died when Tom Scott quit YouTube. You probably think that Mark Rober has become a little too kid-friendly now. And you wish more than anything that that one guy that made a fork out of salt made more videos. Come on, man, I need to know what happened with the salt fork. But there is one more thing that makes you different from everyone else on the Maker YouTube algorithm. The fact that you've always wondered what it would be like to design and launch your own product. And you're a little sad by the fact that all you can watch on YouTube is people making one-off projects, as cool as they are, and then you never get to see what it actually takes to turn that project into a product, which to me is the most interesting part. I'm guessing those things about you because that was me 2 years ago. Which is why when I decided to quit my engineering job to design my own product from scratch, I decided it would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to become that YouTuber that I always wish existed. I promised you I would document every single moment between my product idea and an actually successful product business. So for the last 712 days, that is exactly what I've done. It started with me opening up to you guys about my health condition called TMJ Disorder, which was the catalyst to the idea for a portable heated massager designed specifically for people with chronic jaw pain like me. You saw me learn to design my first ever PCB, which quickly led to my second and third and now 12th iteration. You saw me 3D print literally hundreds of casing designs and then prove all the haters wrong that told me it was impossible to scale a 3D printed product. We had to navigate regulation with the FCC and the FDA. You saw the good times, getting my first customer, funding an Indiegogo campaign, my first trade show, hitting 180K followers on Instagram and 60K a month in sales. But you also saw the bad times. All the horrible engineering blunders, the broken printers in the middle of peak production, the trademark infringement and rebranding, the moments I thought I made a huge mistake taking this risk and secretly started applying for jobs again. All that to say that we have come a long way. But I think no moment in this journey has been as big of a symbol of success as what I've managed to accomplish in the last 2 months. Because no longer will I be running 3D printers on top of my washing machine. No longer are we going to be hand assembling products on the floor of my 1-bedroom apartment. No longer will I have to pause ads every time I travel. That's right, folks, I finally outsourced production. And oh my god, I am so freaking excited to fill you guys in. Although, fair warning, one of the days there was a really bad moment. It turns out the entire batch of 2,000 circuit boards I ordered for the next few months of production didn't work. And it was my fault. I actually fucked up so hard. Oh, don't get me started. We'll get to that in a bit because first I gotta explain what it even means in our case to outsource production. Because it's pretty different than anything you've probably ever seen before and may actually be the best way to outsource a bootstrapped hardware product if you ever get to that point. But first, here's how the production process usually goes. First, you'll have the idea. Then you prototype it. Then you find a factory overseas probably that is able to manufacture your product under agreed upon terms. Then you send that factory your design files and your prototypes, which they can use to redesign it to optimize for manufacturability and assembly. After you approve their samples, they can start pumping them out en masse. And from there, they can send it to a 3PL or a third-party logistics center or distribution center, either overseas or in your own country. And that's where they get shipped to the final customer. But as I made very clear in this series, that process felt like a terrible idea for me and anyone else who has never designed a product before and isn't a huge risk taker. Because getting that first batch can cost tens of thousands of dollars, which is an enormous risk for something you've never even sold to real customers yet. And even if somehow your first iteration of products end up having perfect product market fit, finding a factory in China without your design getting ripped off is nearly impossible as a first-time founder. That's exactly what this series is about, showing that it is possible to get a product off the ground without taking any upfront risk. To just design for 3D printing and learn to do everything yourself. And it worked! Since shipping our first units a year ago, I've assembled and shipped 1,700 orders, over $350,000 in sales. But then here's what you'll hear from the haters. It's not scalable! And as always, the haters are dead wrong. You just have to take things slow and improve the design as you ship more and more units. And here's what I mean. When I first started shipping yourTMJ pens, it took me around 12 minutes each to assemble. Some of it was a skill issue, sure, but mostly it was the little design things. How long it took to post-process the prints, how hard it was to slide the PCB in, how annoying it was to plug and tuck wires in without interfering. Would the motor catch on its way in? And then it was quality imperfections. What percent of units ended up rattling and had to be reassembled? What percent of units didn't have a good fit between the casing and the cap and the buttons? How many times was your print fail because the temperature settings and filament weren't right? All of these issues made the process unscalable. It was just too hard and took too long to get orders out. But luckily, I barely had any orders to begin with. Marketing is a whole nother skill set that took me time to develop. So in the meantime, it was a perfect opportunity to fix those assembly and manufacturing flaws. It took months, but now my average time to assemble is like 5 minutes and way more consistent. So I figured if I could comfortably build the business to 60K a month by myself, then there's no reason to scrap everything we've built so far just to redesign for injection molding in China. All I have to do is find someone who does exactly what I already do, except full time. An option would be to just get an office and hire someone, but honestly, I didn't want to do that. Managing workers is also a full-time job and takes up a lot of mental space, which is why I started looking for one of those fulfillment centers that would also do the assembly for me. But how did I even find one of those? Well, that's where my social media came in handy. The best kind of partnerships are people from your own network. And the advantage of going all in on a project and posting it all online is that you become a magnet for people that want to help. And trust me, you'll start noticing this at only like a couple hundred followers, which is why I truly believe you are shooting yourself in the foot if you are trying to bootstrap a product without taking social media seriously. So it turns out a guy who's been helping me with meta ads for the last many months already knew a couple guys that ran a 3PL that were totally down for this kind of arrangement to assemble and fulfill my product. I shopped around a little too, you know, I got some other quotes, I took a tour of the warehouse, but at the end of the day, there was one major reason that I decided to go with this one outside of Philly. And that's because my family lives 40 minutes away. Yay! The reason that's important is because I was not delusional. I was very aware that setting up production would not come without its problems. And the last thing I wanted was to fly out to nowhere where I don't have a home base every time one of those problems came up. And as I'll tell you in a minute, production ended up taking weeks and a problem very much did come up. So I'm very happy that I got to spend that time at home for free. And the pricing for this arrangement ended up being pretty simple too. They'll take care of everything and then charge me $12 per every single yourTMJ pen shipped out. Not too bad if you ask me. So let's talk about the move, because seriously, I'm a little overwhelmed with thoughts on this. It felt way crazier than I could have predicted. Oh, and then I'll tell you about how I managed to screw up $5,000 worth of circuit boards.
Guys, today we're going to TMJ factory. All right, that's good. That's a good intro right there.
Yo, what's up? Is that the first assembled yourTMJ pen right there? Let's go. Remember how I just told you about fixing all those design and manufacturing challenges? Well, let me tell you, nothing reveals the fact that you underestimated your product's imperfections more than trying to teach someone else to produce it.
Sí, mucho cuidado porque un poco más de ese contacto y la batería puede...
When you've spent literally thousands of hours of your life thinking about a product, you tend to take some things for granted. Like, the button obviously goes like this so that the heat icon is on the bottom. But when the assembler accidentally puts one together upside down, you realize maybe it's not so obvious. If I was actually good at design, I wouldn't have made the button symmetric, so it would have been impossible to insert incorrectly in the first place. And you start to notice parts of the process that I've clearly developed a skill for and just haven't noticed. For example, a massive problem has been screwing in the cap. I've noticed it's a very fine line between tightening down the cap enough versus ripping through the plastic versus stripping the screw head. In a good design, this wouldn't be a problem. At the end of the day, it sinks in that no one is going to have as much context about the product as I do. I understand how important it is for a thermistor to sit inside the metal tip because I know what a thermistor does. I know that if the device can't sense temperature correctly, it may end up overheating and burning a customer. I know that if the little slot in the tip doesn't point straight up, the cap won't interface with it properly to constrain the tip's rotation and fully clamp it down because I'm the one that designed it that way. But the workers don't have the context to figure out whether an assembly step is going to result in an angry customer or not. I have to teach it to them.
Work harder!
Which also hammers in how important these redundant safety systems that I built in are. I actually had a moment where they didn't tuck the thermistor leads in between the white connectors. Seems like a random tidiness step, right? Well, it's not. It's actually critical in assembly because otherwise the wires get snagged on this little bridge and in this case tore one of the thermistor leads out of the board. If it wasn't caught, the tip would overheat. But instead, when they turn it on for quality control, the board started blinking. That's because I programmed it to sense this error. So imagine if I was negligent or just didn't even consider it. I always knew that quality control would be extremely important. But one thing I didn't expect was how hard it would be to draw the line between what's a problematic device and what's a device that's good enough to ship. Take vibration noise, for example. If it's ever too loud, I rework it. But what defines too loud? Or if the casings have imperfections. But like, they all kind of have imperfections. They are 3D printed. So what kind of imperfections imperfection is not good to ship versus what imperfection is fine. And don't get me started on these darn 3D printers. I totally forgot that over 8 years of using these bad boys, I've gotten a pretty good intuition for how they work. So for people who's never even seen them, it's taken me a lot longer than I thought to run through all of the errors and maintenance conditions. But over the last 2 months, coming back and forth to the warehouse, setting things up, teaching, things started to settle in. Components started arriving one by one, and so I finally gave the instructions for them to start assembling and stocking up on yourTMJ pens, so that when we make the official switch, we'll be ahead of schedule in case any problems arise. Except when I moved out of DC, took my mini apartment factory apart, and moved everything into the warehouse, I ran into a problem that I did not expect. Stupid. And I was honestly sure would be the biggest loss I've ever taken as a business owner. For reference, there have only been a few moments in this journey where my stomach dropped as much as it did that day. It was actually the day of my birthday, August 4th. There was a big box of half-assembled pens in the corner, and I thought, hey, they look perfect, but let me just test a couple to double check everything works. I programmed the board. I pressed a button. The lights came on, but the motor didn't spin. And my stomach didn't drop here because logically I knew for some reason that all my boards were broken. Logically speaking, I was guessing it was just a fluke. No, it was because I knew that for the last few months, things have been going way too well. Sales were scaling, customers were loving the product, setting up the fulfillment center was going smoothly. And I've been at it long enough to know that when things are going this well, something bad is about to happen. But how? I didn't change the design at all. This is the exact same circuit board that comprised the previous batch of 1,000 that worked perfectly. Unfortunately, the how didn't matter. As I programmed the 4th board from the assembly pile, the realization had already set in. The $5,000 tower of boxes I thought was filled with the next 5 months of orders was in fact filled with broken PCBs. But I don't know, let's not over dramatize this. I've had my fair share of PCB bugs. None of this magnitude, but still. And every single time I've somehow figured it out. Plus, the nice thing about content is that it's kind of like a hedge because these bad situations make for good stories. So I got straight to work debugging. Except unlike other times, I literally didn't even have any debugging equipment. I had just shipped all of it to San Francisco. Not a multimeter, not a soldering iron, definitely not an oscilloscope, nothing. I obviously instantly ordered what I could on Amazon, but I was on a serious time crunch. There was only 1 box of PCBs left from last batch, enough to last a month, meaning if I didn't figure out the issue and order a new batch immediately, we'd enter back order, which is a really tough cycle to break out of. It was kind of a weird couple hours. As I said, I already knew that these kind of things were inevitable in business, but every once in a while, I'd get hit with a wave of shame. I just myself so hard. Like, how stupid am I? Why the did I not get them to send me a couple of these boards to test when they first came in? I could have discovered the issue weeks ago in my apartment with all my debugging tools in hand. But then, you know, I just had to calm down and lock back in again. I knew that based on my many years of debugging experience that most likely this was because I made a really dumb mistake. Like, oh, okay, maybe I accidentally flipped the diode orientation in the production file. So I opened everything up and nope, it looked perfect. Then I thought it must have been some kind of mistake with part ordering. Because seriously, the board was exactly the same. I went to my bill of materials and checked the parts that I marked down as replaced, which had to be it. I remember some of the components didn't have thousands of stocks, so I had to swap them out. And I knew it when I saw it. There it was. It had to be it. The dual transistor chip that switched the motor and the heater. Replaced. So I took an industrial sized heat gun I found laying around, blasted the board, burned a couple of fingers, and managed to replace the chip with one from an older board. Holy f***. I replaced it.
Are you like, it's...
Well, look, I replaced it. Okay, so we know what it is.
And I really am stupid because it turns out the chip I replaced with it had a different pin out than what I expected. The internal pins were different. Fuck idiot. So the good news is that all I had to do was buy 2,000 of those little components and swap them into every new board. But then the bad news is I was gonna have to resolder 2,000 PCBs. They took about a week to arrive, and at first I was set on doing them all myself because SMD reworks can be a delicate process. But after doing about 100 of them, I realized that there is no way in hell I'm doing that. So I went to the warehouse to train the workers on how to do it, which by the way was kind of a fun automation mini game actually. When I first started reworking the boards, it took me about 1.5 minutes, but I'm fairly experienced with SMD reworks, so I kind of had a feel for it. But when training someone, they didn't have a feel for anything. The guy keeps knocking off resistors or melting the connector or just fumbling around, resulting in a 3-minute per board time, which forced me to cut down on how complex the instructions were. For example, improving how to take the little components out of the reels so that they'd be perfectly oriented, optimizing the temperature and the airspeed of the hot air gun, minimizing the amount of times he had to open and close the tweezers because that's exactly when he'd start knocking components over. And these improvements ended ended up bringing his time down from 3 to 1 minute, and it even doubled my time from 1.5 minutes to 50 seconds per board. And doing the math across 2,000 boards, that's like 27 hours saved. Although it was kind of pissing me off because even though I lowered the speed by like 2 to 3 times, they did not lower the price by that much. So they ended up charging me like $90 an hour, and that's a bit too much for my tastes, unfortunately. So I pretty much ended up doing everything myself anyway. This shit sucked, and I still have 400 more boards to go. And then I paid my brother to help me out a little too.
Hey, little bro. Hey. Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, I've caught you up to the present date. From what I can tell, things are stable now. Assembly is going well, 3D printers are running, the new batch of boards is getting fixed, orders are officially getting shipped out by the warehouse, and by the time you're watching this, I am hopefully living my new life in San Francisco. I have officially unlocked the door into turning this into a multi-million-dollar company. So what the hell am I gonna do now to make that happen now that I'm free from all this manual labor? Well, that's where I'm kind of all over the place. Of course, my heart wants me to go and start working on the next product. In fact, I already know what it's gonna be, and I have a secret intern working on it. But my brain is spanking the shit out of my heart for thinking of such foolish ideas. yourTMJ pen still has a long way to go in sales and being the perfect product experience. And losing focus is the biggest mistake you can make in product design. So here's what's on my plate. Number one, I need to build out a ton of education around the product. I already wrote a massive guidebook for TMJ that I give away for free, but I want to make a sort of course-esque experience for the customer once they purchase, to keep them using the product every single day and learning important techniques for TMJ relief. I think if I do this right, it'll skyrocket the value that the customers associate with the brand, keep them using the product longer, reduce return rates, and just overall keep us in the premium category outside of anything that knockoffs can ever achieve. Because so far, no other products on the market have been able to match the functionality of yourTMJ pen. But once that does happen, it'll be the customer experience that makes the difference. Number two, I want to improve the packaging. Something that feels a little more premium, but more importantly, leads them through the initial education way better. Number three, I want to focus more on selling to practitioners. So far, we have some that reorder, but B2B sales is a whole nother beast. OGs will remember I already tried cold calling in 2 trade shows, but focus means I need to 10x my efforts. Because selling through trusted doctor's offices will be the #1 way to stay the trusted brand in the TMJ space. And again, play in a league outside of Chinese knockoffs. I'm also going to try to introduce some accessories. At first, maybe start out with a carrying case, and then maybe introduce like massaging oils or supplements. And after that, I have some ideas for much more simple products that won't take too long to develop that will also be helpful to TMJ patients and doctors. I also want to start redesigning yourTMJ pen for injection molding and high-scale production to get it to the point where it's like a finalized, perfect, premium feeling product. And finally, I want to design a yourTMJ pen Pro, which is like yourTMJ pen but for professionals, specifically because they've been asking for some features like longer battery life or red light therapy or sterilization, that kind of stuff. And it'll be more expensive and simultaneously act like a price anchor to help keep the original product, yourTMJ pen, more valuable. As you can see, that is a lot of lofty goals. Not even mentioning the fact that I want to start pumping out more educational videos for you guys because, you know, you asked so many good questions in the comments that I truly think deserve some nuanced answers. So if you're interested in growing as a product designer and a businessman along with me, subscribe. Oh, and if you're new here, go binge the whole Idea to Market series. You're gonna see how far we've come. See you guys soon, and thanks for following.